Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's so great to see all of you here joining us for the once more time for the pre-concert talk with Magdalena Baczewska, who is our artist in residence and is doing all the lectures for our online lectures. And we are excited for the upcoming concert of Florian Noack, who is traveling from Belgium to come and join us. So don't miss the concert on March 20th at 3 p.m. Tell all your friends, and we are looking forward to the concert. And Magdalena, what can we expect? Would love to hear what your thoughts are.
Oh my gosh, my thoughts are that I would love to be there in that concert. I'm telling you, the lineup that Milana has for you this season is truly exquisite. And I know you guys have been to these concerts, and Melissa, you've been very kind to write reports from these events that you've attended. And I know from you that every one of them has been just spectacular. And as you said, you guys can always say that we heard them first before they became super famous, and they are on their way. In fact, Clayton Stevenson, who you heard last time, just did his New York Philharmonic debut a few days after. So literally, you are hearing them right on the cusp of world fame. So thank you, Milana, for this. This is a wonderful opportunity. And Florian Noack, who is coming all the way from Belgium to present a very thoughtfully planned program. Some of these pieces you may already be familiar with, such as the Schubert Sonata that opens the recital. We'll talk about it first. But then there will be other pieces, such as concert etudes by Sergei Lyapunov, who honestly is, even in the piano circles, rather unknown. But he is drawing his inspiration from Franz Liszt and from his transcendental etudes. So we will get to know him a little bit as an artist, but also think about the etude as a genre, because, you know, an etude really means a study and exercise. So how do you elevate the etude from an exercise to a concert stage, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit. And also something that is really interesting and very rare, although not in with the grand piano series, because the idea of artist as a composer and performer is more and more separated these days, right? So you have either a concert pianist or a composer. Having somebody who does both comfortably is very rare, but as I said, not so rare when Milana is in charge of programming, because you had both Clayton Stevenson, who was doing his own arrangement, right, of Gershwin, and Konstantin Sukowiecki, who just recently performed also his own arrangements of opera and Broadway shows. So but I really hope that you realize how rare that is, even though you're hearing them all in the row. Okay, so let's start with the Schubert Sonata in B-flat major in the Deutsch Catalog number 960. This was actually a piece that was written in the last few weeks of Schubert's life. And the poor man only lived 31 years. He was really barely an adult when he died. He died of complications of syphilis, which was maybe the second most popular cause of death after tuberculosis that claimed so many greats, including Frédéric Chopin. And these sonatas were not published during, I'm talking about the three last sonatas, which are considered, you know, the great mature work, again, of a 31-year-old man. They were not published before his death. And so it took 10 years, actually, for Diabelli to bring them to light. And they were not super popular during the 19th century. It was only in the past century, in the 20th century, that their universal qualities, their kind of this existential beauty was appreciated. And now there is no concert season in any self-respecting institution where that sonata would not be performed. I will play you of course, there's always fragments of videos of performances of the sonata. But let me just say that when you think about Schubert's sonatas, Schubert died in 1828. Beethoven died a year before that. And there is no escaping the comparison with Beethoven, who was the master of piano sonatas, having written 32 of them. And so he died a year earlier. And so the comparison is just inescapable. When you listen to the Schubert sonatas in comparison with Beethoven, you will notice that he's a little bit more relaxed about the sonata form. Remember how I talked so much about the sonata form in advance of actually Milana's performance of the Franck piano quintet. There, we talked about that there were these very set rules that one has to follow. Schubert is starting to loosen these rules and introducing elements of whimsy, sort of fantasy, improvisation, a little bit more lyricism. There is spontaneity, but it does feel rather classical in that it is you will never hear huge outbursts of emotions the way that Liszt writes his music, for example. It's all highly personal and one could really say understated. Although if you are really looking for music that truly reflects the human condition, that truly consoles you and understands you, Schubert, and in particular those last three sonatas, would be your go-to positions in the repertoire. They can be absolutely heartbreaking in their simplicity, in those charming, sweet melodies that even through their sweetness, you can feel the tears. So the smile is never a happy smile. It comes after suffering. And it's just so, so very human that we really cannot live without those sonatas anymore. What you always also notice, and you don't have to be a musicologist to appreciate that, is those modulations, the key changes in music that are rather unexpected. So, Beethoven would often just beat us over the head with his modulation, like here is something new and unorthodox, and he would shock us as listeners. Schubert is also incredibly innovative about how he travels through the keys in his music, but it is done more as a sort of a wandering, which is such a very romantic idea, right? Of a wanderer, kind of a lone wanderer. And Schubert, despite these very distant keys that he just suddenly plunges into, he just keeps walking, he just keeps wandering. And that's maybe one of the unique beauties of his music. So let me start with the first movement, molto moderato, extremely moderate. And this is the title that Schubert gives it. And you will, from the first note, notice that serenity, but it's not just simple serenity. It is heartbreaking. It is tender. It is accepting. Very soon after the beginning unfolds, you're going to hear this rather ominous trill in the left hand in a low register and an extremely pregnant pause. So silences are a big important part of this music. Let me share my screen, and I have a beautiful performance here of Mitsuko Uchida, a Japanese pianist, Japanese-German pianist, who is a specialist in music of Schubert, among others. Notice how intensely she listens to the silence prior to the start of the piece and also during those pauses. I'll play just a little bit. Let me see, the volume is okay. Okay. So I did something wrong here. Okay, here we go. So as you can tell, the music is again just so simple. The tune is so gentle and kind of almost heavenly, so simple. It could be something that one just hums casually to oneself, and yet there is just so much humanity in it. I remember that when I was a young pianist growing up, my teacher would say, this is a piece that one plays only when one is mature." But then I completely understand that at the same time, this was written by somebody who barely turned 31. How do you, where does this wisdom come from? Moving on to the second movement, because we have so much music to discuss today. Andante sostenuto, so in a sort of walking pace, but sustained. And this movement has much more remoteness, austerity to it. It's much more contemplative, if you can even imagine such a thing, because the first movement, already over 20 minutes long, was this meditation on life. It just has this philosophical quality to it. The second movement has yet a new element to it. If you listen to the left hand, there is this repeating rhythm of a rhythmic motif of four notes, bum, ba bum, 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 ba bum, and it tends to have this hypnotic effect on the listener. Let me play it for you, just a few seconds again.
Magdalena, we are not hearing anything.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay,
Share
one more
screen.
time. One more time. Oh, yeah, that would be nice if I shared the screen, wouldn't it? Sorry about this. I got lost in the. Okay. I think it should be around here. And again, I just absolutely love how Mitsuko Uchida, the pianist, is really listening to the silence surrounding her and the music, and it's a big part of what she does. Okay, I hope you can hear it now. Just give me a thumbs up if you can. Now listen to that transition. Oh, this is just absolutely breathtaking. I will make sure to send you the links because you may not hear it as well, and I want you to spend some time with this music, regardless of the recital. Really, I think that everybody should have this piece as a part of their life because it really, out of a lack of words that sometimes overcomes us in the moment of extreme emotion, this music really speaks for us. And there is this lament which the right hand plays in two voices, and it's hard to imagine anything more lonely. And there's that left hand, as I mentioned, with that hypnotic four note motif that could be heartbeat or some ominous thought that keeps coming back and bothering us. And yet, just a minute into it, or even less, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. To play these pieces requires tremendous control of not just your technique at the piano, but also your emotions. As you can probably notice, and I also mentioned that it's a very highly personal music, and it is kind of understated in the way that if you let your emotions go and mm, express it in a way that's too obvious, or in some kind of in your face kind of playing, it immediately loses its magic. So being able to control the touch, to control the emotion, and just look at the timing of this piece. We're here for almost 50 minutes. So that is a huge challenge for pianists of any age. And certainly I'm curious to hear your impressions of how Florian Noack does it. Now, the third movement is a scherzo, and I have it queued up here. Scherzo, meaning a joke. Many of you have heard many scherzos as part of different sonatas or symphonies. They are usually the fast, sort of joking in character third movements. And so is the case here. So Schubert breaks that ominous, the remote, meditative quality to give us this pure, light, and spirited, sort of above ground scherzo that just really seems to, it's almost elfin like. It doesn't ever touch the ground. Let's hear it. So as you can tell, it almost sounds classical, right? Something that even Mozart could almost sign his name under, right? It's extremely pure and clean, very different from the style of Chopin or Liszt later. It's got that clarity that really still looks back into the 18th century, but the emotion is already very, very individual and very romantic. Now, because we don't want to run out of time, I have the fourth movement here. And see, we talked about Beethoven and how when one listens to these Schubert sonatas, one cannot escape Beethoven. And here in this movement in particular, I want to give you a little comparison between this final movement and the final movement of Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata in C minor. So let's just listen to the first few seconds, and then I'll play you a few seconds of Beethoven. Okay, just this much. And now let's hear, this is Daniel Barenboim playing the finale of the Pathetique Sonata. Okay, this much. Let me get rid of this window, and then I will go back for just a moment to Schubert and just listen to how similar it sounds. start in the same key. Yeah, so even the key is deceiving because the whole sonata is in B flat, and don't feel like you need to know it, but he starts this last fourth movement in the wrong key, as though he was really going for the Beethoven vibe here. So, but it takes him no time to modulate and very good, sort of elegantly into the correct key. So just to give you a bottom line for this, large work, and you will probably want to wander from one idea to another as you listen, listen for these extremely simple but so very personal melodies, for the changes in harmony and how seamless they are, despite the fact that they can be shocking. And for somebody who's sitting there analyzing the harmonic progressions, they would think, well, that's completely unorthodox. This is not how you write harmony. He's not going according to the textbook rules of changing keys. So and that complexity of emotion in Schubert is something that continues to make both pianists and audiences really drawn to this music. Okay, we're going to now move on to the idea of arrangements and sort of musical borrowing, and the idea of being not only a performer but also a creator. So Florian is going to play a transcription of a transcription. So let me start with the original piece. This is a concerto for 4 violins by Vivaldi, and I'm going to share my screen. Just give me one quick second so that I can cue everything up nicely and neatly for you. Okay, coming right now. Okay, so here is Vivaldi, who was active in Venice and was a virtuoso violinist. He wrote over 500 concerti. So that's pieces for instruments and orchestra. Those who are critical of his compositional style would say that he wrote the same concerto 500 times. But regardless of that, the fact is that about half of these concertos, about 250, are written for the violin, because he himself was a virtuoso violinist. So just listen to a little bit of this wonderful rendition of Giardino Armonico, some beautiful group who performs early music in a so-called historically informed way, in which the violins are using gut strings. The instruments are the woodwind instruments that are used are of the time, or copies of the instruments from the time. So many of them don't have valves, for example. There are natural horns and so on. So it creates a rather different sound world. But anyway, the point here is for us to appreciate this concerto for 4 violins for about a minute. here just about a minute. So you have four violinists who are the soloists, but there will be moments where they are playing their part, to be displaying their virtuosity. But there are also moments such as what you just heard, which is called a tutti, which means everyone, and they become a part of the orchestra, part of the larger group. So the fun is to hear the differences between how the violins talk to the rest of the orchestra, how they talk among themselves as soloists, and now I want to show you what Bach does with this music, because he did get his hands on Vivaldi's concertos, and many of them he decided to arrange. Now, this one, he changed the key from B minor to A minor, and he said, I'm going to do this for harpsichords. Now, he must have had enough instruments at home or somewhere to be able to have it performed. We must remember that he had very talented sons who were studying music. He also had pupils who might have played with him. Later, he became a director of a so-called Collegium Musicum in Leipzig, where it was basically organizing concert series, and that happened weekly. And Bach invited various kinds of musicians, from professionals to students, to participate. So there's a lot of that communal music making in Bach's world. And so here, just listen to how this piece sounds on four harpsichords. As I said, we're slightly in a different key now, but what a different color altogether to now hear these plucked instruments as opposed to string instruments. Okay, to be fair, I am playing the same amount of music, so you have a good comparison. This is also what a feast for the eyes to see these beautiful harpsichords. Just look at that amazing work. Yes, exactly. And how many people actually get to see that? Here, the lids have been removed from the instruments so that we can see a beautiful bird's eye view of these paintings on the sound box. Yes, I will make sure that you have these links as well. As you will notice, actually, most of these harpsichords, let me see, what about this one? Yes, 3 out of 4 harpsichords have the black and white keys reversed, right? So this is more what we see on the piano versus white keys being black in this case. From what I understand, it had to do with the prices of ivory and ebony at the time. So, and it was also in candlelit spaces, it was easier to see what we know today as black keys, as against the black background. So these are the possible explanations of this color scheme. As you notice, all of the 4 harpsichords here have 2 manuals, so 2 keyboards, which also, if when correctly employed, create different colors. So Bach is really going here for the full array of tone colors. And Now, so actually, most of sorry, not Chopin's, but Bach's concerti are going to be some sort of transcriptions of concerti by other composers, and really the prototypes of kind of the genre of a concerto plus orchestra. There's also a very famous Fifth Brandenburg Concerto, which is in essence a harpsichord concerto. But this is really something to behold here, the concerto for 4 harpsichords and orchestra. Now, what does Florian do with this music? He performs it all on just one piano with his 2 hands. So he's taking over the 8 hands of the harpsichordists plus the orchestra, and he does it all in one. Let's hear how it sounds. Okay, and again, I am stopping just at the very same moment. So it is yes, I absolutely agree with Christine. It is jaw-dropping, isn't it? To be able to do that with just 10 fingers. I hope that you have a chance to speak to Florian after the concert, because I would be curious to hear from him about his process and how do you decide which hand does what and which finger is responsible for which instrument? Is he thinking more about the overall color or about being faithful to each of the individual parts of the 4 harpsichords? It would be really interesting to ask him that. And now you can, because of course you now have this knowledge. Okay. Now we're going to discuss the last part of the recital. So what a journey for you guys, from this existential piece of Schubert, moving to these very, very lively transcriptions by Florian, from Vivaldi to Bach to Noack. Now we are moving to the world of etudes. So as I mentioned, an etude in French, really means a study, and it was something that is supposed to help you work on a technical aspect of playing the instrument. Most of the time it would have to do with velocity or some sort of control. And I'm trying to queue up a couple of examples of etudes for you. Just so you see the kind of progression. There is a British musicologist by the name of Simon Finlow who distinguishes between 3 kinds of etudes. The first one is an exercise where the specific technical formula is isolated and repeated, right? Kind of drilled, so to say. And the emphasis is certainly on that drill and repetition. There is very little artistic value, one could say, but let me play it for you and you'll decide for yourselves. These are not the pieces that are going to be performed, but I just want you to sort of get an idea, because I promised I would introduce the etude more as a genre and then talk about its history a little bit. So here is Carl Czerny, who was the student of Ludwig van Beethoven and then became the teacher of Liszt. So a very important figure in music history and history of the piano playing. And he wrote hundreds, if not thousands, of etudes, and this is one of them. Let's listen. Okay, I think you get the idea, right? This is not necessarily something that you would pay for tickets to go here, right? I myself certainly wouldn't be interested in that experience. Now, this is the second kind of an etude, and I have an example by Kramer here. And Kramer was a composer whose music Chopin, for example, assigned to his students to practice. So we know that he found it useful. And these are actually etudes where the musical and didactic functions, are complementary. Let's just say, and that aside from drilling a particular technical problem, they have musical value and they sort of have some sort of a narrative that unfolds. Let's hear just a little few seconds. So there is a little bit of that drama, we could agree. It's still not the most musically moving piece of music that you've ever heard, but it sounds more than an exercise. And then the third kind of etude is the so-called concert etude, where the didactic function of the piece is almost incidental. And it's really a piece of concert music at this point. And these are, lucky for you, the kind of etudes that you will be hearing in Florian's interpretation. So I'm going to, yes, let me again just, yes, I'll line up a couple of links for you so that when I share the screen, they look all beautiful and clean. I hope you can bear with me just for 2 more seconds. Maudit du soir. And one last link. Oops, not this one. Okay. A lot of excitement coming up. Now, so about Sergei Lyapunov, let me share my screen. This is a composer born in a tiny little town, and luckily he met the director of the Moscow Conservatory, Anton Rubinstein, who invited him to come and study there. And there he really developed a wonderful sort of pianistic pedigree, having studied with the students of Tchaikovsky, later becoming a protege of Balakirev, and really sort of developing his stuff from there. He's also extremely influenced by the music of the great Hungarian virtuoso Franz Liszt, and this combination of pedagogical influences will have a huge meaning on his music making. Lyapunov may be best known for his concert etudes, which he actually calls transcendental etudes, études d'exécution transcendentale, which means of the transcendental execution, right? So the emphasis seems to be actually on the performance aspect of it. And what he's doing here, for those of you who are already familiar with this title, a title given to his etudes by Franz Liszt some years earlier, if you are doing if you're calling something transcendental after the great master did it. You better know what you're doing, right? So Liszt intended to write a set of 24 of these transcendental etudes. He was, in fact, very inspired by the etudes of Frédéric Chopin, who wrote etudes for himself just because all the teachers with whom he worked had nothing more to offer him. He surpassed their abilities, their technique, their compositional skills, and he simply wrote etudes for himself so he could further his technique. Liszt, who met Chopin in Paris, thought, wow, these are really something. And he ran back home and revised his own etudes, now with the inspiration of Chopin's virtuosity. We must also remember that Chopin dedicated his etudes to Franz Liszt and was extremely jealous of the way Liszt played them. But anyway, enough about Chopin. We're not going to hear any of his music unless we have an encore. You'll tell me after the concert. So Liszt never finished the cycle of 24 transcendental etudes. He only got to write 12, and 10 of the 12 have descriptive titles. I'm going to play a couple of example for you. So they are really kind of mini stories. And what Lyapunov does, he writes the other 12 in the keys that Liszt didn't get to write. So in a way, he's writing sort of book 2 or the continuation of Liszt's work. Now we're approaching the late 19th century and the advent of a player piano. And here I want to share with you a very rare, in fact, recording of Lyapunov playing Lyapunov, his own etude, number 12, on one of these piano rolls that literally were invented around that time. And that etude, this one is not something that Florian will play, but because it exists, I just want you to hear a little bit of it. It is an elegy dedicated to Franz Liszt. So there is no, mistaking the influence. It's as clear as day that these were inspired by Liszt and dedicated to him. So let's just hear a little bit of it. I am realizing that if I play any more of it, we will run out of time. So at this point, I'm going to move to Lyapunov's etudes, and as played by Florian. He is one of the maybe 3 pianists in the world who actually recorded the complete set. So very rare to hear it. This one is called the berceuse, which really just simply means a lullaby. And you might wonder, how is that an etude? How does one practice technique through a lullaby? Let's just listen to the beginning of it. It sounds more like a nocturne, so one definitely wonders, where is the etude component? So we heard this gorgeous introduction, and now we have the main theme, which is not just a simple classical melody, right? It's already quite different from Schubert in that there are all these layers underneath. And one of the bigger challenges for the pianist here will be to keep the pedaling as clear as possible. So just look at his foot at that point. I think his right foot is going to be doing a lot of fluttering. Now, when you go about 2 minutes into the piece, that melody that you just heard gets ornamented in a way that really makes us realize, oh, that's where the challenge lies. There's this whole melody underneath. And so on. The entire set is available online for your delight. Now, this is another very hot young pianist who just won the Van Cliburn competition in Texas, maybe the biggest competition in existence, Yoon Chan Lim. He has millions of followers and fans, and every video of his that exists has millions of views. So just listen to him play the Liszt Transcendental Etude called Chasse Neige, meaning the swirls of snow. What is the challenge here? It's going to be those tremolos, those kind of rapidly changing notes with the lightest touch possible. Later on in the etude, there will be leaps and all these acrobatics, but just listen to the beginning, how delicate it is. You see the leaps? Oh, it's my heart breaks to have to stop it here. But you see how the melody has to be undisturbed. It has to continue with these unbelievable leaps while he's doing this extremely delicate finger work here in the middle, and the melody must never be interrupted. The challenge is tremendous, and not many pianists have ventured to play the complete etudes of Liszt, especially live in performance. You can see this young man breaking quite a sweat as he's doing it. Now, because again, I don't want to run out of time, I will play you something unusual. This must be in Georgian. I don't know what it says, but I think it says this: Dance Lezginka in wedding. So get ready for something different in the last couple of minutes of our session. So Lyapunov, as I mentioned, he was the student of Tchaikovsky. Who Tchaikovsky's choice was to develop a more cosmopolitan sound. He was not as interested in the kind of a Russian nationalist style. But so once Lyapunov got to know this music, then he met Balakirev, who was a member of the Mighty Five, who was a group of composers working on developing that national Russian sound. And so what Lyapunov does, he is really deep diving into that national style. So what you're about to hear is the Lezginka, which is a Caucasian wedding dance where man performs all kinds of crazy acrobatics while a woman dances very gracefully around him. Okay, are you ready? This is not the music of Lyapunov, but I just really want you to see the choreography because it's unbelievable. So the next wedding I go to, I definitely want to see a lezginka being danced. Can you imagine this? I mean, when was the last time you saw this kind of dancing? And so fascinated by that style here, Lyapunov is writing his own lezginka, and it's that very fast dance that is really evocative of his heritage, of his culture. Let's just listen. And so on. So as you listen to it, just imagine this colorful, lively, and purely acrobatic choreography of a lezginka where a man jumps to his knees and the next thing you know, he is jumping up to the ceiling while the woman very gracefully moves about the room. Christina, I love your mug. This says it all. I think that you guys are going to have such a great time at this recital. The program is put together in such a thoughtful way. And from what I understand, what Milana told me is that Florian is also very good at talking to the audience and communicating. So I'm sure that he will complement your knowledge that you have just acquired with some of his own thoughts.
Thank you, Magdalena. Well, that was fantastic. Really looking forward to the concert. Thank you for introducing us to all of this wonderful music. Does anybody have any questions while you're here? No? Everybody's excited about the concert, right? Bring your friends and family. March 20th at 3 p.m. at St. Leo Auditorium. We'd love to have you join us. And please tell everybody to be there as well. Thank you, Magdalena, one more time. Fantastic lecture, as always. And
enjoy Paris.
Thank you very much. Cross your fingers for me tomorrow because I'm performing here tomorrow. So
good luck in Paris.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see you guys always, always such a joy and a great pleasure. And even though I cannot be there in person, I always look forward to our interactions via Zoom.
We do too.
We'll be seeing you next time then.
Thank you.
Sounds awesome. And we will see you in April, Magdalena.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.